Good morning. My name is Councilman Gil Schussler. I'm the chair of the HART Audit, Finance and Audit Committee. Director Melanie Williams, chair of the Operations and Safety Committee, is also in attendance. Welcome to the October 17, 2022 Joint Operations and Safety and Finance and Audit Committee meeting. The meeting format is hybrid. Quorum is physically present at the HART Administrative Offices, 1201 East 7th Avenue, and the rest of the board members are participating via communication media technology. Please look at your screen of your devices. An image of the flag is displayed. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Staff, could you please do roll call?
Yes, sir. Director or Committee Member Castor?
Here.
Committee Member Kemp? Committee Member Knight? Committee Member Overman?
Here.
Committee Chair Schussler?
Here.
Committee Chair Williams?
Here.
Motion passed, or you do have quorum.
Thank you. Rules of participation and roles and responsibilities of both committees are provided in the packet. In the packet, you'll find the minutes of the August 15th Joint Operations Safety, Finance and Audit, and Finance and Audit hybrid meetings. If everybody's had a chance to look at it, is there a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Staff, please take a roll call.
Committee Member Castor?
Approved.
Committee Member Overman?
Yes.
Committee Chair Schussler?
Yes.
Committee Member Williams?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Next agenda item is our public comment. There is no one pre-registered for public comment. Is there anyone present for the public comment this morning? Seeing no hands, thank you very much. Next, we'd like to adjust the agenda if at all possible. Presentations are generally first at this point. However, due to committee member obligations, we're going to move it around a little bit so that we don't lose a quorum on any action items. However, there is one presentation that we should do prior to any action items, and I'm not sure which one that is. Pardon me? 4F. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do 4F first, the state of the fleet, and this will be from Mr. Justin Lafler, Director of Fleet Maintenance, who will present the state of the fleet. Mr. Lafler, you're recognized. You had a second. You thought you had a second, didn't you? Sorry, I guess I could have told you that one. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board, Ms. LeGrand. My name is Justin Lafler. Good morning. Can you hear me now? Yes. All right. Good morning, Chair, members of the board, Ms. LeGrand. Justin Lafler, Director of Fleet Maintenance. Today, I'm going to give you some information on the state of fleet and ask to move forward to action items. HART's fleet consists of 132 active buses, 5 contingency buses, and 25 inactive buses. Our last order was in 2021, and we have 41 total buses that are past their useful life. We have 83 vans with an average age of about 2 years. These are all gasoline vans, and the last order was in 2021, and we have 7 that have reached the end of their useful life. And then we also have 65 non-revenue vehicles with an average age of over 5 years. We received 9 of these vehicles this year, but 14 of them are also past their useful life. So this year we do have some things that we're pretty excited about in our capital budget. We have on the budget to replace some of our diesel buses with CNG buses. It's $9 million, which should be able to allow us to purchase about 15 buses. Engines and transmission replacements, and these are basically stock items for replacement because we haven't done midlife overhauls in the past. Electric bus and infrastructure for $5.5 million. Replacement of paired trains and flex vehicles for $2 million. And $4.3 million for midlife overhauls. So we're pretty excited about this because this is going to allow us to have, improve our state of good repair with our buses, and it should allow us to replace essential components in about 38 buses. One thing I do want to note on here is that we don't have funding on our capital budget to replace non-revenue vehicles at this time. So the FTA sets our useful life guidelines. For buses is 12 years, 500,000 miles. For medium-duty vehicles, like our paratransit vans, is 5 years, 150,000 miles. And our light-duty NRV fleet is 4 years and 100,000 miles. So currently we have 41 fixed-route buses that are past their useful life, 7 paratransit vans, and 14 non-revenue vehicles. So this action item for disposal is for 25 fixed-route buses, 24 that are past their useful life, 1 that is a total loss due to a fire, 2 paratransit vans that have met or exceeded their useful life, and 3 non-revenue vehicles. 1 of those was an accident that was a total loss. So our next steps is we asked you to move to approve to the full board meeting the action item to dispose of 25 buses, 2 vans, and 3 non-revenue vehicles, and move to approve the action item to purchase up to 50 buses not to exceed $35 million to the full November board meeting. That's it. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions? Mayor Castor, any questions? Mayor Castor, any questions? I do have a question. One of the action items is for up to 50 buses. You want to get rid of 41 existing buses?
So currently, on the slide where I showed the capital budget,
Right.
we have set aside money right now for $9 million that would allow us to purchase about 15 buses.
Okay.
The rest of it was contingent on if future money came if we had
Available.
access to future money.
What's the timetable for getting rid of these 41? How long will that take?
So the 25 on the action item for disposal, it takes a few weeks for us to prep those vehicles for disposal, and then we don't want to flood the marketplace. So we typically every month will send a few buses to the auction house.
And who buys them?
They're bought by, it could be bought by me or you, anyone that goes to the auction. A lot of places they'll retrofit, or churches buy them to use parts. People buy them to part out for buses. There's a variety of reasons that they purchase them. You see mobile homes, like people make them into mobile homes, and there's all kinds of creative people out there that do a lot of things with them.
Okay, all right, thank you, I was just curious. Okay, any other questions? Oh, yes, Commissioner Overman.
Well, given the lack of housing that we have, we may find there's a bigger market than you think. That's a sad part about it. Given that we have a plan for midlife overhaul and getting these up to par, is the maintenance yard going to be able to accommodate the workload that you have planned for this?
So for midlife overhaul, we will probably work with some vendors to outsource some of that work. We are short some staff, and there's a lot of vendors that probably could turn those vehicles a little quicker for us. But we typically do a few midlife overhauls in-house as well.
Okay.
We want to make sure that our mechanics are sharp.
Okay, and so, I mean, right now you've indicated there's 132 active buses, and this is going to change that number. Where were we a year ago versus where we are now? Roughly. I mean, have we seen a reduction in the number of active buses that we can provide services?
So I can tell you, I'm not sure the exact number a year ago from now. Pre-COVID, we had 180 some buses.
That was the number I was thinking. That's a pretty significant change. That's why I asked.
So we have our spare buses is set by FTA guidelines. We can have 20% spare over what is used operationally. So we reduced service during COVID, and this is part of this is a reduction. Now these are all the oldest and most troublesome buses, so it's not a horrible thing for our service. It's actually pretty good. It helps us to refresh our fleet a little bit.
Okay, so it helps with our pull-out reliability, I assume? Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about, because we've had to make a lot of changes in our routes in order to be able to address being able to provide the services, and I wasn't sure which was the lead. Is it the lack of buses, or is it the lack of humans, or the lack of revenues, or both, or all three?
for my opinion, all three.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
I think I got another question, but I don't know how to exactly word it, and it's not, probably not appropriate for this setting. Anyway, okay, no other further questions?
Do you need a motion, or are we going to
No,
do that later?
we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that when we get to the actual action items. Thank you, Mr. Laffer, appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to the committee action items. Item 5A is for the committee to form a recommendation, here we go, on the HART Board of Directors to authorize the Chief Executive Officer to dispose of revenue and non-revenue vehicles through competitive sale, public auction, insurance requirements, or dispose on the matter most advantageous to HART. If there's no questions, we've had the presentation, I'm sure you've read the information in your packet. If there is no questions or we need additional information, I'll entertain a motion to move this forward to the full board for consideration. Second?
Yes, second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Castor?
Yes.
Committee Member Overman?
Yes.
Committee Chair Schisler?
Yes.
Committee Member Williams?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that takes care of that one. The next is action item 5B. In your packets, there's a write-up and a proposed resolution to form a recommendation to the HART Board of Directors to authorize the CEO to purchase up to 40-foot compressed CNG, powered heavy-duty transit buses from Gillig LLC in not to exceed amount of $35 million. Do committee members have any questions or comments for staff? Now, just so everybody's on the same page, we're talking 15 this year out of the current capital plan, and I believe the total information, or the revenues to cover this in the package was about $20 million. Now, some of this will cover the paratransit, and it'll cover, but not the non-revenue? How are we going to? We don't have a plan in place, but we're working on that. I'm sure Ms. Kirk will come up with something at her bag of tricks. Anyway, okay. Anybody have any comments or questions from the committee?
This is I'm sorry.
Okay, no, go ahead.
This is basically to make sure that we have more buses where the electric bus transition is not really in place at the moment, so. And these are operable and good condition buses rather than those that need to be reconditioned before we put them online?
These will be new, won't they?
These
These
will
are
be
new.
new, and these will be CNG, so they are low-emission vehicles. So we are transitioning away from our diesel fleet to CNG and then to electric. So
Okay.
this will be helping us to get rid of our diesel fleet.
And these are full-size buses?
Yes.
40 foot,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, great, thank you.
Okay. So we need a motion to move it forward to the November 9th meeting.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Castor?
Yes.
Committee Member Overman?
Yes.
Committee Chair Schisler?
Yes.
Committee Member Williams?
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, next action item is 5C. In your packet, there's a write-up and a proposed resolution to form a recommendation to the HART Board to authorize the CEO to exercise future option years of the existing contract with Adventist Health Systems, Sunbelt, Inc., DBA, Advent Health Centricare for DOT physicals, medical review officer, MRO, and drug and alcohol testing. Do committee members have any questions or comments for staff? Seeing none, is there a motion to recommend moving this forward to the full Board of Directors for November 9th regular board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Committee Member Castor?
Yes.
Committee Member Overman?
Yes.
Committee Chair Schisler?
Yes.
Committee Member Williams?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to committee action item 5D. In your packets, there's a write-up and a proposed resolution to form a recommendation to the HART Board to authorize staff to proceed with a solicitation for procurement of equipment and installation of cloud smart closed-circuit TV, CCTV, security cameras for various HART facilities. Do committee members have any comments or questions for staff? I did. If I may, is there anybody present who can address the,
Yes, there is.
could you come forward? Hi, and you're?
Good morning, Jose Marquez, Director of Safety and Security. Oh. Good morning, Jose Marquez, Director of Safety and Security.
Okay, now what facilities will this cover?
We're going to be transitioning in the next 3 to 4 years all transit and facilities. We're going to, it's going to be, every year we're going to be doing a specific transit center or facility. We're going to start with 21st Street and Marion Transit Center, and there's a plan that with the available budget to then the next fiscal year with probably Northwest and then UATC and then Yukon.
Okay, all right, so, and this is at least, we started with the funding of this in this year's budget for preliminary design and technical work?
It's a pre-package. It's basically cameras that are, we don't need design, and basically select the location and what model is the best for our cost benefit analysis. And based on the size of the property and the locations, we'll determine how many cameras per facility will be needed.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate your answer. No other questions?
Committee Member Castor has a question.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I did not see your hand up. I apologize. Please proceed.
Okay, no problem at all. And this may, I don't know who's making the presentation, I can't see, but it may be for Ms. LeGrand as well. The CCTV, the camera systems, what's the timeline on those security cameras for the bathroom access? And on an off note, what's the timeline on getting those restrooms open again? I'm receiving a lot of calls about that.
I can answer the part of the CCTV cameras. The CCTV cameras for the bathrooms at Marion and UATC have already been relocated and they're functional. The external ones. We don't have cameras on the inside. These are cameras located outside looking at the entrance of the bathrooms. The rest of the...
Thank you. And those are ready to be operational? There'll be somebody that's monitoring those that can let people in and out of the restrooms?
The cameras are operational, but the rest of the attachments, changes, I don't have the information.
Okay.
Mr. Smith, do you mind coming to the podium and responding to the second part of the mayor's question?
Morning, Chair, committee members, Dale Smith, Director of Facilities. We have put a lot of measures in place on the public restrooms, and we've been working over the past several months. Marion Transit Center is close. We're putting in vandal-proof fixtures, hardening the walls. We've put up doors. We've added additional locking features to the doors at Marion Transit Center. So we're fairly close. We want to get Mr. Grand by to take a look at everything and approve it. And once we get the go-ahead, we'll start opening the restrooms in our phased approach.
And do you want to talk about the attendant as well, Mr. Smith?
Yeah, we're looking to get an attendant at each of the locations that would not only allow people access, but then could go inside the restrooms and make sure they're tidied up and clean, give us a little bit more repetition on cleaning of the bathrooms than we currently have, and then also to make sure that there's nothing going on in there that we need to address. So we're hoping that happens pretty soon.
Do we have a time?
And commentary, it's a shame that, we have to spend our dollars on, instead of providing transit solutions for the community, we have to spend this funding on needless vandalism in those locations. So I applaud your efforts, and it's a shame that we have to do this for our not for our transit customers, but for those who want to cause problems. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Any timeline on that, on the reopening?
Well, we're hoping to get MTC opened up in the next few weeks. That is our plan. And as we said, we're going to do a phased approach, so MTC will be first, UATC would be second.
Be nice to be open for the board meeting. True. Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, do we have a motion? Motion to move this forward to the full board.
So moved.
Second? Roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Castor,
Yes.
Committee Member Overman,
Yes.
Committee Chair Schisler,
Yes.
Committee Member Williams.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next action item is 5E. In your package, you'll find a write-up and a proposed resolution to form a recommendation to the HART Board to authorize staff to proceed with solicitations and resulting contracts for procurement of third-party administration for automobile and general liability, claims expense, and workers' compensation claims services, TPA, for family and medical leave, FLMA, and the HART Plus customer trip provider, property and casualty insurance broker services, legal services, and a 3-year SmartNet maintenance review provider. Do we have any questions or comments for staff on this? Do we have anybody who can break this a little bit
Yeah,
apart for our
there's a
listening
lot,
audience?
there's a lot in this.
Yeah.
We do. I'll start with Ms. Zickafuss, who's the Director of Procurement, and then have her to call on her colleagues to speak about the specifics of each of the components.
Good morning.
Good morning. Kathy Zickafuss, Director of Procurement and Contracts Administration. So what we did, though, just first, what we did was we looked at 6 months out for solicitations that are current solicitations that were near to expire in the next 6 months. So we want to get ahead of those contracts, and that's the reason there's an abundance of them here in this one action item. So the third-party administrator for automobile and general liability claims and expenses and workers' compensation claims and services is one solicitation. Are there questions on that? Because we do have a contract specialist who has the current contract and who will be doing the solicitations that can.
Might as well, for transparency and everybody on the same page.
Of course.
Good morning, I'm Audrey Reeves, contract specialist. This solicitation is for the general liability and claim services and automobile claim services out of risk management. We will also solicit for a new firm for workers' compensation claims, and this is all done under risk. At this time, we have 2 contracts with 2 different firms. We are going to put out one solicitation and see if we can get one firm who would do both. But some firms only specialize in workers' comp, and some firms only specialize in the general liability and automobile claims. So we're going to go forward, one solicitation, and find the best that's for HART.
Okay. And then the FMLA, I'm sorry. Commissioner Overman.
Thank you for before you move to the FMLA, on the liability versus the workman's comp and versus auto, the risk factors, I would imagine, are considerably different. So what are you using for capital reserve requirements in order to be able to adjust for the differences in the risk in the RFP?
They're looking at the different risks that we will look at in the proposal, and to see they have their operating funds that they look at, and then based on the information that comes in with the claims, they go back. Jason Ryan, who is the risk manager, takes a look at all those that come in.
Okay, and you won't be accepting any single-purpose responses in this RFP?
Yes, ma'am, we will.
You will be?
Yes, we will look at all the solicitations that come in, and, we want to make sure we have, and with each firm will be reviewed for the criteria, and based on the number of technical points and who has the best, the committee will have a discussion on what would be the best firm or firms that would be selected.
Okay, so you'll have waiting, I assume, on the firms that actually can offer both.
Offer both.
And then criteria associated with the risk capital or reserve requirements for each of these firms to make sure that you have adequate insurance.
Right, and then we look at the price too at the same time.
Okay. And on the waiting side of that, where does that fall?
That's going to be our new procedure.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Now, who's going to take care of the FMLA? Not sure if those are all together or what, the next batch.
Okay, the next is FMLA. This is for someone to provide the oversight of our FMLA program. Are there specific questions to that?
Any questions? We're just trying to parse it out so we
Okay.
know what's being covered. Okay, the next.
The next is our HART Plus customer trip service provider. That's currently with Yellow Cab. And so we're going to solicit that. That one's expiring in the next 6 months. I think it's June, actually. That one will expire, but this one's going to be a little bit different in that the way that instead of patrons or qualified folks contact Yellow directly now, moving forward, we're going to dispatch to the service, whether it's in-house or whether it's outsourced.
So, Ms. Zuckerfus, thank you for explaining the nuance here. So, in an effort for us to manage the Yellow Cab service better, what was shared just now is that our customers contact Yellow Cab themselves to schedule their trips. Instead of, like with HART Plus, our customers contact HART, and we tell them which vehicle will come and get them. We dispatch the trip. So we recognize that we're not doing that with Yellow Cab. So there is an opportunity for us now with the new contract for us to manage how people get dispatched to whichever service. So for example, if someone calls for a trip and we realize that a paratransit van is going to take longer but Yellow Cab is available, we can dispatch them to Yellow Cab, which will, our hope is to provide better coverage and better resources for our customers. So that's the one thing that's going to change in the next, one of the things that's going to change in the next contract.
Okay, very good. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yes.
So the Yellow Cab service is available when a HART, as a relief valve for the HART Plus service. So is it only available when the HART Plus service operates? Because Yellow Cab runs 24 hours a day.
So I have Mr. Alvarado come up and talk about the details of how the service operates, but we do have a contract with Yellow Cab to bridge the gap, as you will, between the two.
Okay.
Yeah, and Omar Alvarado, Chief Delivery Officer. Just to be clear, the way it works today, like Mr. Graham was explaining, is it's directly from the customer to Yellow Cab. So it's available during the paratransit hours, and that'll continue to be the case as well. The only difference is now we'll be able to decide whether we're sending that trip to Yellow Cab or we're doing that trip internally. It gives us better control and really better control of the on-time performance as well.
Okay, great, thank you.
To that point, while you're there, I think the question was safety valve. What about off paratransit hours? Can a resident or a customer that needs to go to the hospital or can they still get the Yellow Cab on off-peak hours?
Not currently,
Not currently.
but certainly something we can explore for the future.
Okay, all right, good, thank you. Okay, all right.
But one point, though, our hours are pretty expansive, so I believe, Mr. Alvarado, correct me if I'm wrong, but our service starts at 4 a.m.?
3:30 in the morning, so yeah, right before 4.
And it goes until,
Past midnight.
so, if someone needs a trip between midnight and 3 a.m.
Sorry.
They can call Yellow Cab.
And for September, we expanded those weekend hours too on the paratransit side, so that you're getting coverage almost until 1 in the morning. Really.
Okay, all right, very good.
And so the scheduling team that does that is available those hours as well? To be able to
Dispatch.
coordinate it?
operates 24 hours.
Okay, great, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Cool. All right, so then that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, number 5 will be the property casualty brokers. Or is property, are any of those mixed together, or is it just, are these 3 more separate groups?
No, the next solicitation is the property and casualty insurance broker services. Are there specific questions on that?
No, I don't, any questions on that? I see no hands raised. No, go ahead.
Okay. And then we have legal services. I believe that contract expires in June as well. So again, getting in ahead of that, we have legal services.
Now, who is that currently?
Well, there are three different disciplines. I can talk about that one.
There are 3, labor and employment, workers' comp, and then we have general counsel.
I'm sorry, I can't.
I'm sorry. So the general counsel is the general counsel for the board of directors.
Right.
That's correct.
And that's
Okay.
Ms. Mandel and company. Okay. All right, cool. All right, and then last but not least is our 3-year smart net maintenance renewal provider.
Yes, this is a maintenance renewal for our Cisco products, really the foundation to all of our programs. 90%.
Okay, all right, I'm going to, I don't see any hands raised, so I'm going to restate this, the motion, or is there a motion to recommend the HART Board of Directors authorize staff to proceed with 6 solicitations, I'm assuming? 6 solicitations, and resulting contracts for the procurement of the aforementioned items and risks and so forth, to be presented, and advance this item to the full HART Board of Directors for the November 9th meeting for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Committee Member Castor.
Yes.
Committee Member Overman.
Yes.
Committee Chair Schisler.
Yes.
Committee Member Williams.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for indulging us on that. That was a little complicated, and I just want to make sure that when we go to the board, we can, if there's any questions, we can explain we've done our due diligence and at least inquiring as to what these things are all about and so forth. Last committee action item is 5F. In your packet, you will find a right of proposed resolution to form a recommendation to the HART Board to authorize staff to proceed with the solicitation of procurement, here we go again, paratransit, demand response, flex computer rate dispatch, / automatic vehicle location and scheduling intelligent transportation system. Is this all one unit, or this is all one baby? Who wants to talk about this for a minute? Come on back.
Alvarado?
Come on down.
First of all,
Okay.
sorry for the,
That's all right.
name there.
That's all right.
But we really wanted to encompass everything outside of fixed route service, not just for today, but, potential for the future. Really, it's an opportunity. When I was at the paratransit committee meeting a month or 2 ago, one of the first things I heard customers and riders say is, I don't know where my bus is. And it's really hard for me to plan around my day not knowing when it's coming, where it's coming. So we really wanted to provide kind of an equitable approach across the board, right? As a fixed route passenger right now, you can look at an app on your phone and you can see where the bus is potentially. So we wanted to provide that same capabilities on the paratransit side, give you the ability to book on your phone as well, cancel on the phone and all those things.
Okay. I'm just surprised it's not an acronym like, popcorn that covers all of these things. So anyway.
We'll work on developing one.
Exactly. Does staff or does the committee have any questions for staff or anybody here? Okay. Yes, Ms. Overman.
Can I ask a question? Does this same system coordinate with all the other technologies that we use? I mean, I know Flamingo Fair is a different deal, but is there some coordination across the whole universe of the ways that we interface with customers?
Yeah, and that's the way we wrote it. We're hoping for an open API in the back-end sortability, essentially, to be able to book regardless of what kind of other system you're using and vice versa.
Okay, and is there some day we're going to be able to actually have, riders actually apply for disability access rates fares without having to physically come to this location?
That's another benefit we're hoping from this system.
Excellent, that would be great, because it seems counterintuitive. Folks have difficulty getting around, but then making them come here seemed a little interesting. So I'm glad to see that that's part of the goal here. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
This might be the nerd in me, but I'm looking forward to this demo on this one in particular. Okay, no other questions for staff for the committee? Questions for staff? I'll entertain a motion to present this, or move this over to the full board for November 9th.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Committee Member Castor?
Yes.
Committee Member Overman?
Yes.
Committee Chair Chisler?
Yes.
Committee Member Williams?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, staff, for jumping through the hoops on this. We do appreciate it. Now let's go back to our presentations, and we'll start with 4A, the Operations, Maintenance, and Metrics Report. First presentation will be in the Operations and Maintenance Metrics Report from Mr. Stephen Fields, Manager of Transit Logistics, Mr. Jose Marquez, Director of Safety and Security, and Mr. Nicholas Colburn, Manager of Technical Services. Mr. Fields, you are recognized to start the presentation. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, board members. Good morning, Ms. Allen, CEO. My name is Stephen Fields. I'm here to represent the Operations Maintenance Monthly Metric Report for August and September. Ridership by all modes. Just move this letter out. Is it on?
That's good, okay.
Ridership for the month of August was right over 1 million, 27,466,000. For the month of September, 938,725 riders for the month of September. FY22 ridership by all modes. Fixed route bus for FY22 was 9.6 million, FY21 was 9.5. Total for the year for all modes, 10.9 million for FY22, and last fiscal year we did 10.4. On-time performance for the month of August, we hit 75%. Correction, August was 75%. September is 73% for all modes that we rode for on-time performance for fixed route buses. August, September missed trips. Monthly total trips for the month of August was 45,479 trips. That's 99.74% completion. For the month of September, we did 43,440 trips at 99.45 trips completed. And for the month of August, partial trips was 40 partial trips missed, September 45 partial trips, and for the month of August, full missed trips was 79, and for the month of September, 193. Any questions?
Why I'm sorry, yeah, Commissioner Overman.
Yeah, these are a lot of trips, and people clearly are using buses because they truly need them. The numbers are higher than I would have anticipated. What are your leading issues associated with, missed trips means the bus didn't go out, or could you help?
Yes, there's a variety of different reasons our buses don't go out, from maintenance problems with the buses or personnel.
Do you have that data?
It is in the appendix 3 slide to that slide. All right, so the partial mixed trips for the September, if you look at it, we did mechanical was 15 and scheduled adjustment 17. Full mixed trips, we had no bus that reached 91. And for the month of August, mechanicals was 23 for partial and full trips. We had 30 mechanicals and 15 operators shortage and 23 scheduled adjustments. Those are breakdowns of the different ones.
May I ask a question? What does no bus mean? I mean, how is that different from mechanical?
Mechanical breakdowns happen while they're out on the route.
Oh, okay.
No bus happen on the yard itself.
So
When
there
there's
was-
no bus available because of part shortage that we've been running through for a couple of months.
Okay. So we really are hurting for buses.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Jose Marquez, Director of Safety and Security. This is the safety and security report for the month of August and September. For the month on fixed route, in the month of August, we only had 3 reportable events under NTD that will give us a 0.53 accident rate per 100,000 miles. On the month of September, we had 1 fatality, 4 individuals injured, and 2 safety events reportable. That gives us a safety event rate of 0.38 for the month of September in fixed route. On paratransit, we only have on the month of August 1 injury. That's no safety events. And on September, we didn't have any injuries and just 1 safety event. And for the streetcar, we have 1 reportable injury in September and 1 reportable event on September, but no events on the month of August. If there's any questions?
Why is the denominator different for the paratransit and fixed lines than the streetcar? We went down from 100,000 VRM to 10,000.
Usually rail, especially streetcars, they generate less mileage. So therefore, we use 10,000 miles as the revenue miles standard versus paratransit and fixed route that they usually generate a lot more mileage. That's a normal practice in the industry, and FTA recognizes it as acceptable.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm sorry, go ahead, proceed. Any other questions?
Good morning. Nicholas Goldburn, Manager of Technical Services. At the last committee presentation, Ms. Williams did ask what are major mechanical failures. And to address the question she asked, we added 3 slides, all 3 slides. Before I go into the details of what are major mechanical failures, I want to first explain the jargon.
Okay, can we, I don't mean to interrupt your presentation, but Ms. Williams had to step out, take a phone call. Maybe we could bump you back till she comes back, since this was her specific question. we'd like her to get the benefit of that. So let's, who's behind you? Anybody?
I'm the last one.
You're the last one, okay, so are you doing the hurricane too?
No, that's Mr. Marquez.
Okay, let's move on to the Hurricane Ian response. Don't lose your place, don't go anywhere, we'll get you back in a minute, okay? You're not off the hook yet. Thank you, sir. Okay, you're up for the Hurricane Ian response. Thank you very much.
Good morning again, Jose Marquez, Director of Safety and Security. This is the report on Hurricane Ian and HART response to the weather phenomenon. The report is made in a chronological order following the days on response by day. HART, we started monitoring the weather phenomenon before September 25th, but on Sunday, September 25th, HART personnel reported to the EOC to start the planning stages for evacuations of zones A and B with the EOC staff. And we'll continue tracking the weather phenomenon with the help of the EOC. Monday and Tuesday, September 26 and 27, HART staff continue staffing the EOC on 24 hours. HART began hurricane preparations of our facilities and our fleet. We started a fare-free service on Monday at 2 p.m. and we continue providing service on Monday until 11. Streetcar service ceased on Tuesday, September 27. We began providing transportation for evacuees from zones A and B. And this process was, they will take our buses on their normal routes and they will go to one of our facilities. And from that facility, the school district will transport them to the assigned shelter. And we started also coordinating special request trips through the EOC for HART vehicles to execute. On Wednesday, September 28, HART staff continue on the EOC. The EWAR administrative building was powered down and secured. HART provided transportation to evacuees until 2 p.m. where service was suspended and the fleet was moved to this designated staging areas for storage. OCC employees and security staff remain at the operations and maintenance facility at 21st Avenue during this storm. On September 29th, Thursday, this is the day after the storm, HART staff continue present at the EOC 24 hours. HART staff mobilized to evaluate damages and start the recovery process. Streetcar staff addressed major debris on the alignment. And HART operators started the service returning evacuees to their homes on that day. And also on that Thursday, HART restarted operating on a fare-free on-demand service from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. from the HART facilities to the destinations within the service area that HART provides. And on Friday, September 30th, we returned to normal revenue service, and we can report that no HART employees were injured and no major asset damage were caused during the Hurricane Ian. Any questions?
I don't have any questions, just thank you guys for all the hard work everybody did, staff and everybody from men in the EOC and the OCC and everything, because it took time away from your families. And I know the citizens appreciate it, and I know your board appreciates it. So thank you very much for everything that everybody did during it. I'm glad everybody was safe, and we dodged another bullet in Tampa. Thank you.
Thank you. It's our pleasure. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Sir, this is Mayor Castro.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
also would like to applaud the entire team for the organization and the way that so quickly and all of the actions taken to ensure that our residents were safe. So please pass on the appreciation to the entire team. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, item 4C, third presentation from Ms. Kathy Sikafos, Director of Procurement and Contracts, and Ms. Adelie LeGrand, Chief Executive Officer. Ms. Sikafos, you are recognized. Come on down.
Good morning, Kathy Sikafos, Director of Procurement and Contracts. I'm going to, there we go. So I'm going to give an overview of our current revenue contracts. And we'll talk about the bus shelter advertising, we'll talk about transit advertising, we'll talk about audio transit advertising. And those are three sources of revenue, advertising revenue for our system. And then Ms. LeGrand will talk about the fiscal 23 advertising plans. For our shelter and bench advertising, our contract was awarded on March 25th, 2008. The contract term was 15-year base with a 5-year option. The contract will expire on March 24th of 2023. Then we have transit advertising. The transit advertising program is limited to on-vehicle advertising, including exterior and interior space. The contract was awarded April 4th, 2016, and the contract term is a 3-year base and 2 one-year options. In January of 2021, we had a resolution that added TECO streetcar line system advertising to the HART's advertising contract, and we extended the contract term to December 31st of 2021. Then December 2021, a second resolution, the board authorized an extension through June 30th of 2022. And then in June 2022, the board again approved a resolution to extend the contract through December 31st, 2022, and the contract expires December 31st, 2022. And the final source of advertising is our audio transit advertising on fixed route buses. That contract was awarded December 31st, 2021, and the contract term is a 3-year base with 2 one-year option periods. So our revenue for fiscal '22, the bus shelter advertising was $544,003. And transit advertising, this is for the bus, streetcar exterior and interior space, was $1,405,582. That number includes 28,750 received quarterly for streetcar advertising. And then finally, for the audio transit advertising, our revenue for fiscal year '22 was $10,286. And the last resolution, June of 2021, authorized staff to conduct a solicitation for transit advertising, and that's where we are today. Is there any questions on the contracts?
Thank you, Commissioner Overman.
Thank you. That was very helpful to kind of summarize where we are. I'm trying to make sure I understand. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts on the bus shelter, the shelter and bench advertising. You know, there's a series of bus benches out there that are perceived to be HART's benches, but they're not, correct? And I know there's the previous company, I think that actually has a contract that went back to 2008 too. That's why I was wondering if it was the same thing. Those benches have contracts and right-of-way permits associated with them, both within the county and within the city. So there is some legacy operational opportunity there. But I know that we were looking to try and see if there was a way to improve our sheltering for the buses. And many of those benches that are not HARTs, if I understand it correctly, are at HART stops. And so I was curious, in this process of addressing the shelters and the benches, what progress has been made to reconcile those that are HART buses and benches, shelters and benches, and those that are not, and what has been the plan to create some synergy with that opportunity? Is there something, where are we with that, I guess is the best question.
Well, first of all, I'll just speak to the shelters. The shelters are HART's assets, so all of them shelters are HART's.
Right, and we had, it seems like, I don't remember, it was 2 years ago, we talked about the fact that we had a bunch of shelters somewhere in a warehouse somewhere that we weren't using, but that we're looking for improvement in our shelter experience for our ridership. But I'm not sure where we are with those that do not have covers, what our what's our goal for what we want to see when it comes to bus benches and shelters for our riders, I guess is the question.
Okay, so a couple of things. I'll address first the benches that are not HART benches. And you're accurate, that is a contract with the county. And I have been working closely with the county's team associated with their contract with the benches. So we are trying to work through the process to make sure that we have a better understanding. And if you look at the image, Mr. Kafus, if you can go back to your slide number, I think it's 3 in your series, or I don't know if it's the same numbers. Right here, yes. So if you look at that photo at the bottom of the slide, that's one of the benches that are not HART's benches. So they typically look like this, concrete base with wooden, I would say, seats, and then the backing of the bench is an advertisement. And if you look at, even in this image, the shelter, which we have more upgraded shelters that we're installing currently, it doesn't have the same look and feel, and it's, you know, if you had to sit there and wait on a bus, it's not as comfortable as it could be. So we are working closely with the county to, you know, navigate this process. As it goes for the overall HART, you know, approach to our shelters and benches, we do want to have a consistent look and feel across all of our assets. Our capital programming group has put together good schematics of different types of shelters based on the right-of-way that's available. So if you have a lot of right-of-way, like in this photo, you can put a larger shelter with more seating in it. If we have smaller, narrower right-of-way, it'll look a little bit different, but it still have the same look and feel. So that's the direction that we're moving as far as the overall look and feel of our benches and shelters. So I hope that gives you some clarity.
It does help, because there's an opportunity there. But I thought there was also a contract with the city that was also expiring for those benches inside the city limits. Are they only contracted with the county for that particular?
From my understanding, it's only with the county. I have not engaged with the city on the shelter contract.
The city locations, I believe, are covered under the city's contract. Is that your understanding?
I can go very old school with my knowledge on this. This issue, since I was pretty heavily involved in it during my time with the city of Tampa, and also dealt with HART at my time with the city of Tampa to deal with this particular issue. The city has, for many years, had a code provision that allowed for benches within the right-of-way. And so a lot of the benches that you see right now have been permitted for very many years. And I don't recall that there was ever a specific contract for that. It was done through a permitting process. There was an effort during that 2008 timeframe to coordinate locations, but they are not HART assets. And because of those longstanding permits, it would be worth discussing that further with the city and their mobility department about where that permitting process is, what's out there, and how that's worked. I know that there was a long-term attempt on the part of the city to actually require the benches to more fully advise where those were located, if they met ADA requirements and other things. And so that's just sort of historical, because I did spend a lot of time on this issue during my time with the city.
And that's kind of why I asked the question, because it's my understanding that those assets, you know, they're organized by the same set of organizations that do the bench advertising. And that the county's contract was due to expire, it was due to expire, I think, last June. I was of the understanding that the city had a similar type of, or there was a similar type of contract for the benches that were within the city limits. Is that not the case, to your knowledge?
We'd have to check with the city staff on that. Mm-hmm. It is not my recollection that it was done pursuant to a contract. It is my recollection it was done pursuant to a permitting process.
Okay.
But to the extent that those benches have been there for a long time. Yeah, the mayor.
They have been there for a long period. And I know there's, my understanding was that it was a permitting issue as well, but I'll find out and I'll get that information to the people.
Because if there's an opportunity to get some uniformity you know, because there is the perception that those are HART benches, and they're not. But if we're looking to improve the experience of our ridership, and there's a bench there that's not a HART bench, I think it's an opportunity to try and negotiate or come up with an opportunity to contract with them. It's not to say that there's not a greater opportunity to advertise, but if that can assist in not only improving the quality and the experience, that would be beneficial at this point, I think. All right, and that also has to do with how we have contracted with the benches we do have and the stops that we do have, where we work with the company for making sure that it's, you know, it's clean, the trash is picked up and those kinds of things. And when there are benches that are close to our stops, there is that aren't being maintained in a similar fashion, that I think needs to be addressed. And this is a great opportunity for getting that done. So are we only looking at the county benches at this point with this process to address, you know, the future advertising for this section of it?
I believe that's where we are in the presentation at that point.
Next steps.
Okay.
Is that where we are?
Yep.
I believe that's Ms. LaGrange's show.
So for our next steps, as you see on this slide, we did get approval to move forward and solicit for a new contract. A part of this process, since all of these, I would say, ideas and opportunities have presented themselves, what we're working with staff was to do a little more due diligence. So first and foremost, we reached out to some of our agency experts. So we reached out to the American Public Transit Association, APTA, as well as the Florida Public Transit Association, FPTA, to get more information as far as what has the industry seen as far as transitioning from different types of advertisements. You may recall the list of advertisements that Ms. Zuckerfuss presented didn't include Wi-Fi or any push advertisements. And that's because back in 2008, when the first advertisement came out, as well as what we're working on now in 2016, we really weren't looking at how we could utilize mobile devices as a mechanism for advertisement. So that's something that we're also looking to include in the next procurement. What we're also going to do, and this is not uncustomary, is to put in the procurement language a minimum guarantee. So we're going to look to see, we're going to kick off a minimum guarantee of 1.5 million, but we're also working closely with the industry to see what the input and feedback is for that minimum guarantee. So our next steps include releasing the solicitation, holding, if you will, an industry forum, which is in some contexts they call it a pre-bid meeting, but in that meeting is when we'll have the opportunity within the procurement rules to engage with those who would be interested in, I would say, submitting a bid for this, a response to our bid opening, and have some engagements with them. Typically, the way that works is they'll provide questions to us prior to the meeting, and we'll also have a forum where we respond to their questions. The value of this is that it'll help us to understand if we have to refine our approach and if there's anything additional that we need to take into consideration during that process. And then our hope is that as we continue through the solicitation process, getting the input, that we will be able to go through the procurement process with selecting a firm who can give us the minimum guarantee, also be more creative in the mix of advertisements that we can, revenue that we can generate outside of just interior, the traditional, everything that was on the slide, and also looking at the opportunity to utilize more, I would say, electronic mechanisms. As we did mention, we do have on our vehicles the audio advertisements. You also saw we don't generate a lot of revenue from that, so our hope is that, you know, with utilizing our Wi-Fi system, which is on our vehicles, and also adding that to the mix, that we can increase our revenue as well.
Can I have a follow-up?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. I was trying to discern, so what is this audio transit advertising? We approved the contract in December of last year, and it's a 3-year with a 1-year renewal.
That is
How
correct.
does that play in with the timing of the bid process and the contract we have in place now? And what is the extent of the service and success? Obviously, it's not going anywhere.
Right.
Or it's not going as we wish it might have. So I'm not familiar with the audio service. Can you share with me what that looks like?
Sure, Mrs. Kafus, if you don't mind, but as she approaches, it's basically when you get on a vehicle and you hear an ad that comes over like the PA or the speaker in the vehicle,
Right.
that's paid advertisement. So it would be verbally advertising something. It's pretty old school, but we still have a contract to do that. As far as the contract terms, in all of our contracts, we have the opportunity to cancel the contract for convenience, as well as if we see an opportunity that is better for the organization. So through this process, we will look at what the options are and what's in the best interest for HART. And if there's an opportunity to also keep what we have and include it as a mix with other opportunities, we'll do that as well.
That's really very helpful, because that's what I was thinking. If we have a 3-year contract with them and we still have 2 more years, how does that play in terms of I'm assuming there's not a guarantee, there's not much revenue there, so. And that's limited to
Interior.
It's inside, but I mean, is it limited to outside vendors versus HART's message, or how does it?
Oh, no, it's outside vendors.
It's outside vendors?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So for our messages, we don't get any revenue from advertising for things that are going on
We
at
ought to
HART.
fix that.
Yeah.
But, that was why I was looking at the timing there. And then the other is the transit advertising for the interior and exterior of the buses. Interior are the panels that go on the
cards,
inside that you
yes.
can see in the cards. And the exterior is obviously the various different versions of the exterior wrapping or tails or whatever what is the end called? I forget what they're called. Anyway, there's a variety of different sizes, and
Right.
only because I purchased one once before. So,
Okay.
But I was curious about the fact that we've got that contract expiring this year, and how we were going to go about mixing all of these. And given that we approved moving forward with finding a solution back in July, and we're now in the end of October, what that transition looks like and what would be the cost of having that to the revenue stream if we weren't able to go on a month-to-month or some type of contract that would allow for the wrapping to stay on there until we have a solution, because it doesn't sound like we're there yet. And we're close, that sounds
Right.
like, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to address a bid meeting and a solution between now and December 31st.
Right, so the last board meeting we had, we did discuss this, and staff agreed that we would look at, the opportunity to do a month-to-month as we transition from what we're currently doing to the next, iteration. With that in mind, also, that even with transitioning to, moving away from having full exterior wraps to something that elevates the HART brand, you can't rewrap a vehicle overnight. Even though in the existing contract, the existing vendor is responsible for removing the wraps that are in the vehicles, but still it takes time to remove wraps and then rewrap it. So we are aware of that, and the team has been working on a timeline of how long it will take to actually go through the process of rewrapping our vehicles with the new HART brand. So we are looking to come back before the full board to ask for a month-to-month renewal, but when we come back in November to have that conversation as a follow-up from the last board meeting, we'll have a clearer timeline of how long it will take us to rewrap the vehicles, as well as what the timeline will look like to take the whole fleet from where it is now to a new HART look. So we're working on those details. It's going to take a couple of vendors to make it happen because of the timeline, and also we cannot have our buses out of service, right? So the whole wrapping, it's a unique, one can say, well, how many can you wrap in a day? Just give us that number, but we also have to have the buses in service, we have to bring buses back and have a better understanding of how we can rotate that through. So that's what we're working on, and you heard earlier that we have limited buses, so it's not a situation where we always have 20 buses just sitting around waiting to do this. So we'll be prepared to present that to you in November.
Okay, so I still have a few questions regarding the practicality of this process of deciding to use all of the exterior of the bus for branding for HART because of the magnitude of the largest piece of our revenue stream that comes from advertising is on the outside of the bus. So have we done the analysis to determine competitive types of advertising systems? We haven't seen the marketing plan that we agreed we were going to do, or the board authorized in July, to see how that revenue stream can be replaced. Is that what's going to be presented in November?
That is what's going to be presented in November.
Okay, with data on other agencies that have shown how they've generated revenue to replace what we would be replacing by not offering certain types of advertising?
Yes.
Okay, because that's what my concern is.
Right.
Because as you said, very few people pay for advertising on the audio to talk about HART. They would talk about themselves.
Right.
And so that's why I was like,
right.
who's going to pay us to wrap our buses with HART's logo?
So yes, we'll have a presentation with the marketing plan, so that will be available. But I do want to, I would say, temper the expectation that this is a one-to-one replacement. And I do recognize, as was stated at the last board meeting, if the board wants to vote in opposition of removing full wraps off of the vehicles, and that happens, then staff will move in the right direction to support what the board is asking for. But from where I'm sitting, as the CEO of the organization, of a transit system that not only is underfunded, is not valued in a way it should be for a county of its size, of 1.5 million residents, of which a vast majority of them rely on public transit. Over 60% of our customers do not have access to a car. Over 70% of our riders are using transit to go to work. And out of all the other public fleets that we have in our county, no other fleet has advertisements wrapped on the exterior of their vehicles. That being said, as I mentioned before, if the board chooses to say that generating $1.5 million in revenue, which is less than 1% of our overall budget, has so much value and more value than a HART brand, that we should move in the same direction, then we'll just release the RFP with the language that it says currently from the last procurement and continue to wrap the vehicles. What I'm hoping doesn't happen is that the value of the brand is directly connected to the revenue that's currently being generated from exterior advertisements. Because if that is what the conversation is, we don't have to wait till we have a marketing plan. We should just have the conversation and just be very candid on what is important and what the brand means to HART. But I can tell you, if you're in a community where a HART bus drives through your streets, a street that probably needs more investment because there may be potholes, or you have intersections that aren't safe, and you have this bus going through your community, and you don't ride the bus, but every time you see it, it has some sort of advertisement on it, and you're not even really sure whose bus it is because you don't ride the system, and you're not a customer, and you don't understand what that bus represents to other people who live in your county. We have an opportunity now, regardless of the $1.5 million, to make it clear to our community that HART is a brand that we should recognize and support. Just like when you see the small buses that have Tampa General Hospital on it, you know it's Tampa General Hospital. It doesn't say any other type of advertisement wrapped on the outside of the vehicles. You know it's a bus shuttle that's taking you to the hospital. But again, I serve at the pleasure of the board, so whatever direction you'd like us to take is the direction that we would take.
Oh, I don't necessarily want to suggest that the Hearts brand doesn't need to be celebrated. We do need to do that. I think there may be a solution, but what I'd like to see is some assurance, given we don't know where some of our revenues are coming for a while, when we have budgeted the 1.5 million, that we have some plan for making sure that we don't lose that along the way. And that's my only concern, is in that process we have some certainty about what the board directs everyone to do, doesn't run the risk of losing the revenue that has been increasing over the years, and it has gone up nicely. But I wanted to see if there was an opportunity to find both the branding and the advertising revenue secure. So, I mean, I'd love to see branding, but we can't afford to pay for it ourselves. So that was why. Well, thank you very much for that. That was very helpful.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Do we need a recommendation to take this to the board, or is it assumed that it's coming back?
It's already on the agenda for next time.
All right.
These are just presentations. Hillsborough County Transit Authority Reserves. Ms. Kirk, you are recognized, Chief Financial Officer, to present.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
To Chair Sichler, members of the Joint Committee, members of the board, and Mr. Graham. This is a presentation on the fund balance reserves, which are governed by the budget reserves section of the HART's financial and budgeting policies and procedures. This is a summary of our reserves. We have 2 self-insurance reserves, a risk reserve and a medical benefit reserve. We have a capital match reserve, FTA liability reserve, the fund balance reserve, and the final one is the undesignated fund balance. During this presentation, I'll address each reserve. The first reserve is the self-insurance reserve for risk. And the policy basically states that HART shall maintain an overall reserve equal to 75% discounted confidence level of the annual actuarial study. The calculation of the risk reserve, the current actuarial study states that our discounted confidence level is $4,289,667, and 75% of that discounted confidence level is $3,217,250. For the medical benefit reserve, the policy states that we'll maintain a reserve of 20% of projected claims. Our projected claims were estimated during the last actuarial study at $1,566,440. 20% of those projected claims is $313,288. Capital matching reserve. The board policy states that we should maintain a reserve to be used for aging, outdated, or inoperable capital infrastructure replacements. In addition, this reserve serves as a means to fund the required capital program grant match requirements, and that capital match reserve currently is $4,500,000. FTA liability reserve. We have a reserve that was established to cover potential liability to the FTA for early disposition of grant-funded assets. And I say we established this reserve because this reserve is not stated in the financial policies, but it's something that the Financial Operations Department established several years ago just as a good business practice. And that reserve is $1,200,000. The fund balance reserve basically states that we should reserve 90 days of operating expenditures to ensure the maintenance of services, to mitigate any delays, reductions, or lower recalculations of the Section 5307 formula funding, to be used for unanticipated expenditures of a non-recurring nature, and to meet unexpected immediate increase in service delivery costs. reserve, this is the calculation of the reserve, is based on the operating budget. For fiscal year '23, we're projecting operating expenses of $114,309,110. 90 days, or basically 3 months, equals $28,577,277. And our current reserve, starting this year, is $17 million. And then the last fund balance reserve is undesignated fund balance, and that's simply cash in the bank. And currently, we are projecting that to be $8 million at the end of this week. We did start the week with $9.2 million. So this is a summary of all of our reserves. The risk reserve, $3.2 million. The medical reserve, $313,000. The capital match reserve, $4.5 million. The fund balance reserve for operating expenses, $17 million. The FTA liability reserve, $1.2 million, and the undesignated fund balance, $8 million, for a total balance in our reserves of $34,236,173. Finally, the reserve policy states that we'll recalculate the reserves at the end of each fiscal year, prior to the issuance, or when we issue the annual comprehensive financial report, and that we should strive to reserve at the high level of the set range. That completes the presentation. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Kirk. Can you go back a couple slides?
Let me see. This one?
The one before. Okay. I got to, unless anybody else has, anybody have any questions? Okay, go ahead. I'll wait till you're done.
And I want to thank you very much for bringing this. I know I've been asking about reserves because they make me nervous. That's just me. I like having a good safety net. This is excellent in the sense that it does show, where we've got buckets in the event that changes. They are specifically to each of those purposes, however. So should we find ourselves, given that, we have a fund balance and a discounted risk reserve one for the discounted confidence level, the dollars can't go from one place to another should we find ourselves outside of the operating requirement budget or balance. My question is on the one that covers I'm trying to find the right slide because I've moved away from it for a second. The one that covers the FTA liability, is that due to funds that we have come in from FTA, or where we do or we don't have the matching requirement? What would cause of FTA liability balance?
FTA liability is basically for early disposition. A vehicle is destroyed, it's not beyond its useful life, and we owe the current market value back to the FTA. That could be an example. If we don't get insurance proceeds for the entire loss, then, FTA policies basically state that you use the vehicle, and I'm talking about a big bus right now, for the 12 years or the 500,000 miles, which is the useful life. If you dispose of that vehicle before that end of the useful life, then you have a potential liability to the FTA.
Okay, that's why I was like.
And hopefully, if we have that situation, we'll have insurance proceeds. But if we don't, then we have to give money back to the FTA.
Okay, so that's why the auto and general liability policy is quite important, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, to fill in that, and it's just the deductible that we would need to be concerned about. So when we get to that contract, we'll need to make sure we're paying attention to that. That's very helpful. Thank you. As I mentioned, I'm constantly kind of keeping track of, given that we oftentimes are underfunded in so many different ways and have been for so long. that the trend of our reserves is important to me. And I'd like to see if you have the capacity of showing us what that trend looks like over time. So for example, this is a snapshot, which is very helpful, thank you. But seeing where it was a year ago, like I was asking earlier, where were we a year ago in the number of buses we have versus what we have now? You know, seeing the trend on reserves is also important. Is it possible you could build a graph to show the board at the next meeting, the trend over the last couple of years, and so that we could see if how we're doing on each of these different categories? Because I would imagine the movement is different.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, we're able to fund some of these more easily than others. Some of them are pretty hefty numbers and very important numbers because they cover operating expenses. And so if it's possible that you could, give us a graph showing how these balances have moved over the last few years and then where they are now, so we can see how they compared to last year. And then this year, and then when you do that annual update, make sure that's in part of it, because I think it gives the board some perspective on how we're doing on maintaining our reserves, which reserves are being depleted faster than others, because that on long term would hit our budget in terms of how we have to keep those reserves funded. But also it'll give us a confidence level on whether or not the revenues we have coming in from fares and other sources are able to help support our reserves. Is that something we can do?
May I respond?
Yeah, please.
So we can do that, but I just want to, again, temper this. You know, I think a part of understanding the reserves and how it's changed over the years, you cannot take away the fact that we have received COVID relief dollars, which have created a different environment for the reserves, which if you just look at a graph and you see where the numbers are, it doesn't necessarily depict the fact that we are in the position today that we're in just because of a pandemic happening and we were able to access additional funds. Whereas, our overall budget would be approximately $20 million less than what we currently have, and that will also have an impact on our overall reserve. So, as we do this exercise, it would be good, it may have value in seeing where we were before, but if you take away the context of how we ended up where we are today, and the fact that if we don't have a dedicated funding source outside of what we currently have, tomorrow is not going to give the same perspective. But it's not because staff hasn't budgeted or staff is not taking serious the importance of a reserve. It really comes down to the fact if we are short $20 million and we have to get buses out in the street and we have to make a decision, do we build up a reserve or do we try to buy some more buses, right? So I just wanted to make sure that, staff can definitely come back with a graph, but just take into consideration that there are going to be funding sources over the last 2 years that did not exist and will not exist.
No, and I appreciate that's kind of why I'd like to see it, because it would give us some perspective on maybe if a secondary slide showing the trend in revenues too, because we did have additional revenues for a year or so that are non-recurring, and it can help us on seeing what we were doing before versus what we are now. Because I do recall in 19 or 20, when we first saw those charts showing where we had been historically eating up our reserves to a point where we were at risk, that the board needs to know that. I mean, that's why I'm looking for additional sources of revenue, not only through the surtax, should it pass, but also through advertising or other raising fares. I mean, there's a variety of things that we have said in the past that we are going to have to find additional revenue sources in order to not have an impact on our ability to not only operate, but to keep our reserves at a healthy level. And we're already depleting them to some extent. So I think that having that as part of her, Ms. Kirk's report would be, I think, helpful for the board in choosing to prioritize that issue.
Yes, if I can just add, the fluctuation certainly is in the fund balance reserve for operating expenses and the money in the bank. The other funds have been basically the same, and we'll show you the chart. Of course, the risk reserve and the medical reserve should be adjusted annually based on the actuarial study, and so they were adjusted because we do get an actuarial study every January. So, but I can certainly do the chart that you're asking for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kirk. Okay, just, Brooke, did you have any questions?
What about the month?
Huh? No. My question's regarding the reserves. The risk and the medical benefit, they're not statutory, there are policies, correct? The balance requirements?
These are all your policies.
Okay, that's fine.
Good stewards of public funds.
Okay, now the 4.5 million, is that related to the electric bus issue from matching up with the Fed money? Is any of that related to that?
No, the capital match fund just simply states that we will have money for the capital match.
As needed.
We have as needed.
Okay, that's fine.
As
The
needed.
fund balance reserve for operating last year was 15, I think 15 and a quarter, if I remember correctly, at the end, so it's actually grown. I know during the budget cycle, I had made the plea that we had any additional revenues, ad valorem revenues coming in on the 95% versus 100% budgeting, and I think you guys did a great job in putting away as much and rat holding as much as you could, so I think that's good. We're only 60% of what our requirement is from our policy, so that's everybody. That's not an indictment of staff or HART. It's an indictment of our funding capabilities. So we need to pass that sales tax. Anyway, and then the undesignated fund balance that fluctuates day to day. So I mean, tomorrow it'll be lower, the next day it'll be higher. You never know. It's a cycle timing. So thank you very much for your presentation. This does answer our the initial questions that we had. Yes, Ms. Kirk.
And I want to add that I think it's a great policy that you budgeted 95% of the projected ad valorem, because based on our unaudited numbers, the 95% was 57 million, and we came in at 57 million. Had we budgeted 100%, then we would have had a greater deficit. So I want to commend you on that policy.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on that? Advertising revenue contracts, we just did that one, I thought. The TDP, I'm sorry. Okay, okay, 4E, that's got a bad heading on it. Mr. Alvarado, you're up. Regarding the transit development plan, a major update.
Thank you. Real quick, do you guys want to finish up next portion?
Yeah, we could. We'd like to, if we could. Okay, we're going back to the initial presentation. Was that the initial? 4A, the operational and maintenance metrics report. If you will pick up where you left off, Ms. Williams is back in the room.
Good morning, Nicholas Goldburn, Manager of Technical Services. At the last committee, Ms. Williams, you did ask to see what are the major mechanical failures. So what I wanted to do was first explain the jargon used in the industry and then show you an example of major mechanical failures within our system. So I will start off by stating that FDA separates system failures into two categories. There are major mechanical failures and other mechanical failures. A major mechanical system failure are those that limit actual vehicle movement or create a safety issue. The layman's term, the bus is broken down, it's not going anywhere, or it's a safety for our patrons. Examples of these failures will be brakes, doors, engine cooling systems, steering axles, and suspension issues. And failures that don't fall in this category goes into the auto mechanical system failure category. And these examples will be fare boxes, wheelchair, or climate control issues. In looking at the slide, you will see a flow chart on the right. That was taken directly from the 2022 NTD reporting policy manual, and it pretty much walks us through the decision-making tree to make the categorization. So now in looking at our system, in September, we had 60 NTD reportable failures. 47 of these failures were chargeable, where we were able to verify the complaint and repair the issue. The top three issues within our system for September were coolant leaks, stop engine alarms, and brake issues that came in at 5. In the auto mechanical system failure category, we had 71 entity reportable failures. Our HART mechanics repaired 62 of these failures where we found an issue. And the top 3 issues we found in September in the auto mechanical failure category were check engine lights, we had 24, fair boxes, 8 issues, and transmissions, we had 5. So our goal is to drive 6,000 miles between mechanical failures. For the month of August, we drove 4,909 miles, and in September, it was 4,658 miles. And looking at the major mechanical category, our goal is to drive 15,000 miles before experiencing a major mechanical issue with our buses. In August, we exceeded that goal. We drove 15,904 miles, and then for September, we went down to 12,191. This concludes the presentation. Do you have any questions?
Please,
Mayor,
please.
thank you so much for the presentation. I very much appreciate it, and thanks for your flexibility and awaiting my return.
No problem, ma'am.
Thank you. Could we go back to a couple of slides, please?
Which one?
The second slide. Major 60, right, the third slide, thank you. Third slide. Page 10. Okay.
That one?
Check engine, so you were able to repair 62 of these out of the 71, and the major ones were cared for, and just commendable. Just to see the visual of these really makes a difference. Thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And then moving on to the next page. And the chargeable, and the amount of time you want, the miles you want to drive before there's a next event.
It's 6,000 miles. That's our goal.
It's between failure, trend.
And the logic behind our goal is that we do a safety inspection every 6,000 miles. So from our perspective, our bus should be able to make it to the next inspection without having a major mechanical issue.
That was my question. Why 6,000 miles? Okay, so that's the little ticket they put on your car when you get a service and they say, come back in 6,000 miles. Okay, thank you very much. Next page, and 15,000 miles is the next one? Okay. And so our goal at this point is to identify the reasons the bus doesn't make it for 15,000 miles, and then there are some proactive measures that take place as a result, and you take those steps so that you can make it the 6,000, 15,000 miles respectively.
So we look at our failures pretty in depth, and we try to implement solutions to the issues as we see them. I can go back several years ago when I started with the program, our biggest issue were AC complaints during the summer. What we did at that time, we implemented an annual AC program where we constantly do AC, preventive maintenance on our AC system. In the last 2 years, the summers, our AC were no longer our number one issues. So in looking at the data, we saw that, okay, here's an area where we're struggling, what can we do to get better? Currently, we're piloting technology looking at our check engine lights because that's a major issue for us. So we're working with a vendor using AI to constantly monitor 20 buses within their system and provide feedback and predictive maintenance so we can get ahead of the issues before they occur.
Thank you. Thank you. This is very good information. Thank you so much for sharing. And the trend from 10,000 to now up to 15,000, there's a slight dip, but I understand that you're working towards that. So thank you so much for this information and the work you're doing to keep our drivers safe and be proactive as well. I appreciate it. Thank you to you and your team. Thank you, Ms. LeGrand. Thank you.
Thank you. I did have one question. Did predictive maintenance replace prevented maintenance?
No,
Okay, that's good. No, and acronyms change. I want to make sure I'm not that far behind. Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good presentation. Thank you very much. Okay, moving forward, Mr. Alvarado, you're back up. Welcome. This is the Transit Development Plan 2023-2032 major update.
Hey, Mark, thank you very much. Good morning once again. Just wanted to walk everyone through a quick presentation on the Transit Development Plan update for 2023 to 2032. In front of you right now is the agenda, some of the items in the Transit Development Plan that we're going to update today. So first I want to start with our onboard survey as part of our public involvement process. We did a survey last year between August 23rd of 2021 to September 16th of 2021. The goal was really to compile information to understand how our passengers are using the system and how the system is being used across Tampa. Something important for us in terms as we're looking at some of the respondent profile is we saw a lot of diversity across the board. One thing that really came out to me was that 25% of our passengers speak a second language at home. In terms of how people are using the system, 2/3 of our passengers are using it to come from home or go to work. That other portion that you're seeing here is really related to people going to dinner, sightseeing, or visiting friends and family. Additionally, we also asked about how people are getting to our buses, how they're accessing the system. 90% of our passengers or more are walking anywhere between 7 to 10 minutes to get between their final destination to a bus stop or from a stop to where they're finally ending. In terms of how passengers are paying, 58% of our riders are using paper passes, and about 50% of our passengers are still using cash as well. In terms of vehicle availability, we saw that about 39% of our passengers have access to a vehicle. In terms of the trips, so we saw that 30% of our riders could have taken their trip on that particular day with an alternative form of transportation. Next, I'll talk about the public input survey. This was a survey that was performed this summer. And just to give you guys the difference between the two surveys, this was really more of a survey about the community at whole. So you didn't have to be a rider to take this survey. This wasn't like the onboard survey. To mention one thing on the onboard survey, it represented about 10% of our average daily ridership, so 3,100 or so. We're here, we only got about 500 respondents, but across the board, we got a better idea of the community as a whole. We asked 14 questions to get a better idea of how people are using the system, what they feel about the system, what they know about HART. So a little different in terms of the makeup of the base. About 50% self-identified as white or Caucasian, and you'll see in some of these metrics they don't perfectly add up to 100%, as many of these were multiple choice. So if I identify as more than one of the options, we allow you to do that. In terms of the respondents' ages, about half of our respondents were between 40 to 50 years old. We saw some big kind of differences in terms of the income. A third of our respondents made under $25,000 or less, and another third of the respondents made $75,000 or more. So where were people coming from, where are they from, what are they doing? So something we saw is that a good amount of the respondents were from the Waimama area, or kind of the center of Tampa. In terms of work, the majority of them worked in the downtown area, as you can see in the schematic here. So the service types that they used or would use, 80% were fixed route riders, or would be fixed route riders. Something important to note here too, if you see at the bottom, the flex shows 17%. I think that's a pretty high metric considering the flex in South County is one route with one vehicle. So really good show out for that area. And you see that on the previous slide with the concentration of how many people live in Waimama. Next, the top three purposes of the trips that they would take were work, recreation, and shopping, 73%, over 70% across the board. What would make transit more attractive? Really, our biggest answer here was frequency. People want to see more frequency across the system. When we asked people what they felt should be HART's priority, again, they reiterated frequency as a number one priority for what they feel HART should take on. In terms of infrastructure investment, people wanted to see better amenities at the bus stop. They wanted real-time information, they wanted better shelters, and they wanted better lighting at the stops. next I'll talk about our mission, visions, goals, and objectives. I'll say a big part of this process was really a collective process across the organization. We engaged everyone from our management, our chiefs, all the way to our drivers and our frontline workers as well. So first I'll show you guys the mission and vision, and really the mission is all about getting back to the core of what HART is and what HART is here to do. And the vision is really about kind of future setting, so what we see for ourselves in the future and who we want to be in the future. So we started this process. I have about 12 boards in my office with about 12 to 15 different goals that we had for the agency. And we boiled those goals down to these 4 goals that you see in front of you. And really those goals are about really 3 things. Our people, so that's our riders and our employees, our community, and our ability to deliver service. So I'll start with some of the objectives for goal 1 in terms of being financially sustainable. So the objectives are all about finding ways to be more efficient with our resources, a continuous focus on our capital plan, and finding new funding opportunities and being financially accountable. Goal number 2, prioritizing the customer experience. The objectives here are really focused on delivering the amenities and the service that the community has asked for, and really allowing HART to better enable life without a car in Tampa Bay. Support employee success. So here, these objectives are about a holistic approach to employee engagement. We want to recognize our employees, and we want to remain focused on diversity, equity, and inclusivity. Lastly, certainly not least, here is enhanced community value. And really the objectives here are all about being a local partner, a good local partner, and also a steward of mobility in the region. So next I'll talk about the transit needs. What you'll see here is a list of needs that are funded and unfunded with where we are right now. So what you see in front of you is really in line with a lot of the survey, right? So everybody wants to see more frequency. The first part of this need for us is getting the frequency. So right now we have about 2/3 of our system that's running every 60 minutes. Everything you see in front of you here would reduce that to 1/5 of our system, so only 7 routes would run every 60 minutes. Another request was premium service, so expanding services like bus rapid transit that allows people to get to their ends quicker, and the street line extension, and also the ferry as well. And then also better regionality, so better connectivity regionally, so limited and express services that better connect people to more jobs. New local services as well to better align what our current mobility demands are and fill in some of those gaps that we see across the system. And lastly, some potential for new service types, new service designs. So that could be anything from, a circulator route all the way to a fully on-demand route, overnight service, and everything in between. Next, I'll touch on our capital plan. Many of you have seen our 5-year capital plan. This is really an extended version of that. Our capital plan is really broken down into 7 main categories. Some of the bigger projects in this capital plan are the improved technology for both the fixed drive and the paratransit, the heavy maintenance facility, and then the continuous improvement in terms of buying new vehicles for the rolling stock and things of that sort. On the revenue side, about 60% of what we're going to put together on the capital plan is going to come from federal. So that capital plan is heavily predicated on us being very aggressive in terms of going out there and finding grant funding. So being really aggressive on that side of it to be able to fund this program. And lastly, on the operations, on the operating revenue side, you see about 65% of that comes from ad valorem. We're not showing any growth as part of this plan for the existing fare revenue. On the ad valorem side, we're only showing a 3.7% growth, which is pretty conservative compared to what we've seen over the past 5 or so years. And those are the highlights of the transit development plan. Any questions?
Wow. No,
Information, yeah.
There's a ton of information. How will this be presented to the board? What's the plan on that?
Please.
Well, I will have to say that Mr. Alvarado planned to spend a lot more time on this presentation, but we were running long. So I did ask him to just touch on the highlights.
That's fine.
For the board meeting, we will allot more time. We won't have as many presentations, so he'll be able to go through and take some time to spend a little more time on each one of the sections. The objective would be in between each section to stop for questions. So if you remember, there are around 5 sections, so there'll be multiple opportunities to engage.
One piece of advice that I would have is be prepared to explain to the full board that if we do or do not have the resources and assets in place to facilitate the grant writing, for example, what's it going to take to get from here to there in the plan. I know people who work with me on budgets hate the word bridge, but we're here, we're going to get here. How are we going to get across the divide in order to get there? There's a ton of information. It's really good stuff, okay? But the more details you can provide going forward, the less consternation from the board I think you'll find. No, I think it's a very good presentation. I had some questions, but I will, if we could get a hold of that early, maybe that might, the presentation before you make it, that might help in getting questions answered. Pardon me?
It should be in the binder.
Okay, I didn't bring my binder with me, but that's okay. I have it. It's sitting on my desk at home. But it was good. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
I noticed in your comments that you got good participation from the Waimama area, South County area. And then we talked about additional potential new local services, but that isn't listed, or that area isn't listed. But there is a list on the on-demand where South County is listed. Is that what you're referring to? It's like a circulator for that area?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Right.
So if you go back to where you see the routes here, and I'll go back there for you. So this route is, the Flex in South County is one bus, one route that runs every hour. So for us to have 17% potentially of that 3,000 base be users of that system, or of that route specifically, really shows that there's an opportunity for us to make that a little better. And I think there's really some low-lying fruit, for lack of a better word, powered up with a little better technology, like even for booking your trips for walk-ons, everything's by phone call. Adding some technology to make that a little easier, but still allowing walk-ons. There's a Walmart that's literally right outside of the zone. That's potentially a real big trip generator. Let's include that, but if we add the technology piece, I think that'd be a lot easier. That's
where I was going. There has historically been a huge demand for the Waimama whole area, largely because it's the average median income there is significantly lower than the rest of the county, and then 2, that's one of the highest areas with people without vehicles. And I noticed in your slide presentation that the survey question that asked, if you didn't have transit, would you be able to travel? It was a significantly high response. There it is. Where 30% would not have been able to get there. Those kinds of barriers to economic success or life success are meaningful to a household. And as gas prices we saw go up, it made it even more attractive to utilize transit if it was available, which would largely lead to why frequency has become our #1 goal. I appreciate this. This is very, very, very helpful, but it also helps us recognize where there's the greatest opportunity. And the circulators that we see there, or additional service to South County, can solve a lot of problems if we can just get protected lanes for some of those buses to be able to get down there and allow for the reliability. Because we did earlier today when we were talking about how reliable it is, I was curious about how reliable it is for those stops that were not on time. Are they in areas where congestion is heavy, or is it just we weren't able to get through, or the buses left late, or what was the primary cause for that reliability to occur? Because it's in those same areas where congestion is an issue that our residents are most frustrated by how do we get around. And if using our transit system is a way of addressing that congestion, I'd love to be able to show that in our plan. But yeah, it would seem as though frequency is definitely the issue. And that short travel times also helps if you've got the frequency in smaller routes, maybe for designated work centers. It would make good sense. So thank you very much for your work. It's good stuff. Very good stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Very good. Okay, moving forward, Ms. LeGrand will report on the sole source awards and deviations from the requirements of procurement manual for September 22.
Yes. You will see, Ms. Jackson, if you can bring up the slide. We only had one sole source for the last month. And as Ms. Jackson brings that up, you'll see, there we have it, for $17,975, and that was for Trapeze software, and that's the software we use for dispatching and routing. Overall, for the fiscal year, we had $1.1 million of sole source. So pretty consistent. If you look across the board, you see a lot of technology, sole source throughout the year for the most part. And this is where we landed last fiscal year, so nothing new to bring up. Okay.
Okay, very good. Any questions? Appearing to be none. Moving forward, just a clarification, my commentary to Mr. Alvarado was for the board, not us, the presentation package for the board, when that comes up. When is that planned? When are you planning on bringing that up? In November?
The presentation?
Yes.
In November.
November, okay, very good. Okay, cool. Is there any old business? I do. Ms. Kirk, yes, sir, how are we with the audit contract?
That's good, right?
Director Schistler, members of the board, and Mr. Grant, the audit contract has been executed.
Excellent. And then last but not least, staffing issues with our department. How are we?
Still working on staffing issues. We have, the struggle is the Director of Budget and Grants. As I mentioned, we've made 2 offers. Both were turned down, so we have to go back out on the street for that. But the other positions, we're doing very well in terms of recruitment.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. That was just follow-up. Any new business? Appearing to be none, hearing none, the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We did it. 4 minutes to spare. Thank you, everybody.